there a way to turn that light down a bit?
Yeah.
So the name of my talk today is called Accessing the Wisdom of the Body. And,
is that better now?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
So I thought, I think later on I'm going to actually demonstrate a little bit of how I work, which is basically the applied kinesiology. It's a way of communicating with the intelligence in the body and sort of helping identify where there's blockages or distortions in that intelligence and removing those blockages and helping the body sort of express a fuller well-being. So I thought I would start talking about the wisdom of the body. Like, what exactly is that? And when I was a freshman in chiropractic school, I had a great teacher who was a philosopher, and chiropractic refers to the wisdom in the body as innate intelligence. It's something that exists in us. It's something that we are born with, and in a certain way, our path in life, in a holistic sense, is to learn how to express what that force is inside of us. So he said, you know, if you're walking down a road and you come across, say, a brick wall with bricks and mortar, and it's nicely built, that it's clear that there's some intelligence that was behind the building of that wall. It's common sense. At that point, you know, humanity and individuals make, you know, we're organized, we're self-organized beings. There's obviously some intelligent force in us that has organized our blood vessels and nerves and everything. So the idea of like, well, where does that intelligence come from? Is it God? Is it, who knows? So that part is like a theological debate, like where do we come from? What's that? But in just a practical sense, philosophically, there's a force that's organized the body that we don't necessarily know where it comes from. We can all have our own ideas about it, but that without question, it's there. So we're sort of in an interesting time in human evolution because that force that has organized the body moves in cyclical sort of motion over time. A lot of the ancient seers and cultures on our planet that have left us certain bits of information talk about the nature of this intelligence that's given birth to human beings and to reality and creation itself. And we're sort of at a time where that force is impressing itself from inside or from above, we could say, in a way that we sort of can't ignore. It's pushing in a more amplified way. Healing is sort of being in resonance with the life force that's in us. And for everybody, it's different. In a certain way, we're all the same in that we're created and an expression of universal life force. But in its individual expression, we're all different. Maybe similar to there being a music playing and all of us dancing in our own way, but all in rhythm to you know, our own unique sort of expression. The idea of healing in a holistic sense is really about opening, almost like what Blair was talking about. It's like the cracks in these masks and these layers in the conditioned mind and nervous system that create like an obscuration between this pure light and intelligence that's in us and its expression. A lot of experiences that we have growing up teach us to relate to ourselves and to life in a certain way that is actually a limitation of our expression of life force. So anyway, there's been all kinds of ways of understanding how that operates in the body. And in Germany, there's been a whole new understanding of of what happens inside the human being when we get sick. And it's a science called the New German Medicine, or also something called Homo Toxicology, which is basically any substance or energy that's toxic to the expression of life force in our body. And so basically like 30 or 40 years ago, there's a surgeon and scientist in Germany named Dr. Voll. He developed a way of measuring how energy moves through the human body by testing resistance on the skin. And he found that over acupuncture points and meridian points in the body, that there's distinct changes in resistance. And it's basically a scientific validation of this whole concept of the body having an energetic system that communicates information, and that can get distorted. It can either have too much resistance or too little resistance, and when there's either one of those, it creates imbalance and disease in the body. So any chronic disease can be broken down in this paradigm to an imbalance in how the body is regulating its own energy system. The way that we test that is using muscle testing, and we can stimulate the body in certain ways and see how the body responds. Depending on how the body responds, we can determine where the imbalances are in the system. So I wanted to kind of talk about the basic big picture idea that can be really helpful in how we understand and contextualize doing yoga and acupuncture and chiropractic and any kind of holistic thing, how we eat. They found that the system naturally has a mechanism of adaptation where you can have an experience and the body takes that experience in, gets affected by an experience, and say it's a vaccine or a trauma, like we fell down the stairs, or mom yelled at us, or something like that. On an energetic level, the body has that experience, and it reacts, and then to come back into balance, it has to integrate or process that experience and use its self-adapting mechanisms to restore balance. Chronic disease happens when the body has these experiences and it doesn't have the energy or the intelligence, the information that it needs to actually restore, to come back into balance. So what happens is the body takes the experience in and it struggles in the resistance in the meridian system. There'll be very little resistance, which means that the body's sending lots of energy to try and fix an issue in the body. It can't afford to keep doing that. So if it's incapable of coming back into balance, it will take the part of it'll take the energy that is unable to process, which could be like an infection or emotional experience or whatever, and it takes that energetically and it subverts it, it stuffs it down into the system, and it buries it there, and in a certain way it disconnects from it, and then it comes back into balance, but it's holding this thing under the surface. So we may, like, our knee might get better after we fell down the stairs, but actually there still might be a problem that's still within the energy field of the body that it hasn't processed. But the nervous system has cleverly, in a way of like efficiently using its resources, has decided I can't fully process this experience, so I'm going to hide away what it is that I can't deal with, and then come back into balance, and everything is fine. Over what they're finding, they call that the body will try and process this on a deeper level, but it takes energy on an unconscious level. So the body, over time, is continually subverting these experiences that it can't fully process. In a spiritual sense, you could say that where we're missing the information or the energy to process would be like our karmic deficit, or where we haven't come to the consciousness that we need to actually regain wholeness through our experience. And so in a lot of these issues are from childhood, actually, where we're unable to process lots of things that happen to us. And so in the type of medicine that we practice, the idea is the body will subvert all these things over time, and eventually it will try and get rid of them on different levels, like creating gallstones or 100 other things. And if it can't get rid of it on a certain level, it will suppress it and suppress it into a certain point that it actually starts creating like neoplasm or cancerous tumors in the body. And part of the, I think, epidemic of cancer going on is a huge amount of unprocessed experiences that people are having, not just in their own lives, but also ancestrally. And so people are filled with subverted energy in the system that is seeking a way out. And cancer is actually an expression of the body trying to rid itself of something that it's unable to process. Ultimately, even though it can be basic nutrition and structural things and all things like that that can get in the way of the body processing these experiences, a lot of times, or ultimately, it often comes down to our perception and our belief structures and our basic consciousness that we carry with us. And so ultimately in this work and in the big picture, shifting our consciousness and opening our consciousness creates a pathway for things to release. When we're under misperceptions, the body draws conclusions neurologically from early experiences that are remembered in the brain, and the brain develops polarized relationships around things like this is good, this is bad, and it's within what's called the implicit memory system in the body. It's something that we're not aware of. The body is relating and reacting and responding to things in like a programmed, conditioned way. And a lot of times that's unevaluated perceptions and things that we wouldn't consciously think, but the body responds that way, and it actually can make the body sick. So a lot of the really effective techniques in alternative medicines are about helping to teach the nervous system and even the endocrine system, hormonal system, how to basically be in right relationship with what's going on internally and also what's going on in the environment. And when that right relationship happens, the body's sort of in a state of resonance that allows a release of things that have been caught in the system. We live in like a really accelerated time where we're forced to adapt to huge amounts of information and things moving very quickly. And for a lot of people, we're just fundamentally in a hyper-stressed state. The body only has a certain amount of resources that it can use to keep adapting to certain things. When we lose our ability to adapt, we get sick. It's like we're trying to stay above water and we lose traction, and a lot of people who are in chronic illness are just not able to adapt to what's going on. When we can't adapt, the body has to press all these things into the system. And often when we work, we'll have somebody that's doing okay, maybe not feeling quite right, but then when we start teaching the body how to adapt, all of a sudden they start expressing symptoms of things that they may not have experienced for 10 years, like migraine headaches or all kinds of issues. And it's the body actually starting to open and heal and release its historical, unprocessed sort of stuff in the system. So I think the most common thing that we're seeing now is imbalance in the hormonal system, and particularly in the adrenal glands, where it's like the body's fundamental system that is activated when it's faced with stress. So what happens is people are dealing with stress all the time, and that system just gets worn out. And then the body is very open to get sick or depressed, and it's just drained of vital energy. And even when it's in a relaxed place, it actually is still under the perception of stress. It's like the body feels that if it relaxes, it's going to be overwhelmed by some threatening circumstance, and so it just continues to keep itself in a hypervigilant state, and it just doesn't care about long-term health or well-being or being balanced. It's just like, how am I going to survive through this day? And we basically end up getting extraordinarily depleted, and it's when the body gets in that state that all these things go wrong in the system. And when we have clients that come in with cancer, serious Lyme disease, or almost every chronic illness, the first thing that we'll find is that their adrenal system is completely shot. And we see amazing things happen with people without even directly going after the Lyme or whatever. It's like if you can strengthen the body's ability to adapt appropriately to what's going on inside, then sort of amazing things can happen where the intelligence of the body is kind of unleashed instead of being used to just protect itself from drowning or being overwhelmed. It uses that to identify what's going wrong and to very effectively use its resources to process that experience and to heal. So, and I think that if it's not easy to find information, but if you guys are interested, it's called a New German Medicine, Homo Toxicology. It's a totally scientific understanding of what goes on in the body energetically, and there are now new modalities of how to diagnose and treat the body on an energetic level. It totally trumps a lot of the linear sort of approach to things because you're dealing with things on a level, just on a deeper level. So, and even just without even the therapy, just understanding yourself within that context can be totally transformational, because sometimes we just feel lost and overwhelmed, particularly if we're in an adrenal stress state. But it's like being able to understand what you may need to help process certain experiences, the value of facing experiences that you're struggling with, the value of like reaching out and getting assistance where you need it, and just sort of having a practice of processing your day, even Okay, so I want to demonstrate really quickly, maybe with Megan.
Speaking of shocked out adrenals.
Yeah. So Megan's been putting this whole thing on. You can lay it back there. And so I figured that maybe she would be stressed. And I tested her before, and she is. So in this work, what we're doing is we create an input into the system, and then we measure how the body responds to the input. So it can be semantic, like remember when you were 3 years old and this happened, and the nervous system will have a response. Or I could touch a point on the body, and the nervous system will respond. The body is like a computer. It has like all different programs running, and you can access those programs by touching different areas. And a muscle test it's really not about the muscle, it's about the nervous system, the central nervous system. When it's not in right relationship with a stimulus, it will inhibit the central nervous system. And I'm going to step over here. And we'll see that by weak muscles. So if you can hold strong, this muscle should go weak. That's the polarity point. So when you have adrenal hormones, too much cortisol in the body, it weakens the connective tissue, and particularly the ligaments in the body. So my input here is going to be to stretch and stress the ligaments in her elbow. If she has stress hormone at a normal level, she's going to be fine with this. Hold nice and strong. She goes very weak when I do that. That's because her ligaments are being affected by stress hormone in the system. And her body's like, right now, it's like stuck in a stress state. We can test in different ways too. I can touch on reflexes for her adrenal glands. Hold nice and strong. And that also goes weak. We can touch on a meridian point up here that regulates the adrenal glands. We can see how that goes. Hold strong. So that's strong on the left side anyway. It's weak on the right side. So the meridian that's regulating the right side of the body is out of balance. You also have what are called muscle-organ relationships, where every muscle in the body, except pectoralis minor muscle, is associated with a specific organ. So for instance, everybody who has diabetes or a blood sugar issue is going to have a weak latissimus muscle on the left side of their body. Is that muscle governed? That's causing this? Is it caused because of a nutritional deficit, or because of something that she's putting in her body that she shouldn't, like caffeine or sugar? Is it caused by a structural issue, like the 9th thoracic vertebrae in your spine around here is reflexes to the adrenal glands? So often we can help get the body out of a stress state just by adjusting that vertebrae. And anyway, so that's together. And it has everything to do with the full context of her life, like what's creating stress, what's relieving stress, what are the belief systems that are, ultimately it's not really about organizing something or the stress that we're actually experiencing in our life, it's how we're relating to that stress. So there can be beliefs, simple things like when we were 4 years old, we did something wrong and our parents got mad at us, so all of a sudden it creates stress when we need to perform. The imprint that that initial experience had in the nervous system, we can actually access that through the body, and we can balance that. So when there's a situation that might bring up that pattern, the body no longer has a reaction to it. And that's, in a way, this work is really about helping the body be in balance with what it's experiencing, not necessarily like removing ourselves from life with things that are stressful, but just learning how to manage that in a way that keeps us healthy and strong. Our parents got mad at us, so all of a sudden it creates stress when we need to perform. The imprint that that initial experience had in the nervous system, we can actually access that through the body, and we can balance that. So when there's a situation that might bring up that pattern, the body no longer has a reaction to it. And that's, in a way, this work is really about helping the body be in balance with what it's experiencing, not necessarily like removing ourselves from life with things that are stressful, but just learning how to manage